Hello and welcome to PowerDesigner. My name is Jeff Giles and I'll be your guide for this PowerDesigner demonstration. Today's PowerDesigner demonstration will explore how to extract Salesforce metadata into a PowerDesigner model for analysis. We will look at a product called Safyr and see how it can provision metadata for a PowerDesigner data mart project. Suppose you're asked to create a sales analysis data mart. We want to follow these steps. We want to capture the sales related information from Salesforce. We want to integrate the Salesforce data into a data mart for analysis. And we want to map the source and the target so that we have an impact in lineage analysis. The problem we have is how to get started with the first task. Salesforce, like other ERP systems, was designed as a standalone black box kind of application. So how do you know what data is relevant for the analysis that you want to do? How do you identify those tables that contain the information you want to analyze? How is the system customized? And how do you know what to load into the data mart? Now, we could simply reverse engineer the database using PowerDesigner, but we might not get what we think we're going to get. PowerDesigner will read the system catalog tables, but the system catalog tables do not contain much descriptive metadata. We might get some cryptic table and column names, and we might not get some relationships. Also, when we reverse engineer it, we'd get over 100 different tables reversed into the model. And of those 100 tables, we wouldn't really know which ones are standard application tables and which ones represent customizations that the application developers have made. To solve this problem, we'll need the assistance of our product from Silwood Technologies called Safyr. Here's a pictorial overview of the different software pieces and how they flow together. If we read this from the left to the right, the first phase is Discover. So discovery is the task of extracting the metadata from the target system by way of data dictionary tables. These tables contain any customizations that have been made to the system. Safyr also collects the number of rows contained in each table. The captured metadata is loaded into Safyr. Now, this is where it's different from how PowerDesigner would do it, because Safyr is actually reading the data dictionary tables where PowerDesigner does not. Once we've done that, we can move into the scoping phase. Scoping is the process of reducing the number of tables down to those that are relevant for the task at hand. We want to do a sales analysis data mart, so we really only want to isolate the tables that have to do with sales related information. Once we have isolated those tables, we can group them into what Safyr calls subject areas, which takes us to the last phase, the delivery phase, where we actually take the subject areas and we push them out to PowerDesigner. PowerDesigner will take those subject areas and turn them into diagrams in a PowerDesigner model. Once the subject areas are exported, we can use PowerDesigner's functionality to perform further metadata analysis and augmentation. Now, before we get started with this process, we need to know exactly what the requirements are for the information we're looking for. Let's open up PowerDesigner and take a look at our current project. So here we are in PowerDesigner. And before we start looking at the metadata in Salesforce, it's a pretty good idea to get an idea of what the requirements are going to be so we know what we're looking for. Here's an example of a simple requirements document which lists 3 requirements for the sales analysis data mart. And the first is to analyze sales by sales rep and by product. And there's profitability, so we want to know what products are most profitable. So that's usually going to be some cost information. And then quantity, how much of each product by category did a customer buy? So that's the information that the business people are interested in. If we click on our model for our sales data mart, we can see that we've already started here with a product table, a sales rep table, time dimension, customer, and some sales facts. So these are the things that we're going to want to integrate when we go ahead and look at the metadata in Salesforce. Let's jump over to Safyr and see what we can discover. Here we are in the Safyr application. The main navigation screen is a series of tiles. The tiles are organized by 3 main processes: Discover, Scope, and Deliver. The same navigation controls are located on the toolbar in the upper left-hand corner of their screen. To save time in this demo, the connection has already been made to Salesforce and the metadata has been extracted to the Safyr repository. So the discovery process has already been done. This brings us to the scoping phase. We will examine 3 of the 4 tiles. Since this demo repository contains no application hierarchies, we won't talk about those, but we will talk about multi-object search, show list of tables, and group tables into subject areas. Let's begin by taking a look at the Salesforce tables. If we click the Show List of Tables tile, this will present us with a window by which we can start the filtering, searching, and sorting process. Let's start by taking a look at all the available tables. Now, by default, if I don't enter any search criteria, Safyr will return all the tables to me. So we click the search button, and now we have all the tables that are in the repository. And if we look at these, starting from the left to the right, we've got the table name, which could be considered the physical name, and we've got a short description, which is equivalent to something like a business name or a logical name. Table type can either be standard or customized. Now in this case, we've just got standard tables, but this would be where I would find out whether any customizations were done to this Salesforce application. It would show up here. Again, this is the kind of stuff I wouldn't be able to get if I just reverse engineered the database using PowerDesigner. And then next to that, we have the number of child tables and number of parent tables and a row count. Now, each one of these column headers allows us to do a sort. So let's say I wanted to find out which tables had the highest number of child tables associated with it. I could just click on the header here for a number of child tables, and it would sort from lowest to highest. And if I clicked again, it would sort from highest to lowest. And in this case, we can see here that user has 237 tables associated with it. So that's a pretty important table here. If we look to the lower left-hand corner, we can see that we've got 256 tables to work with. Now, if we start looking down here, we've got contact, account, opportunity, lead, case. We've got a whole bunch of stuff here. Opportunity looks like something that I might want to investigate in more detail. So let's filter this down and let's see all tables that have something to do with opportunity. So here I can just click in the table name, and I'm just going to type in OPP and then click the search. And here I've got opportunity, opportunity feed, partner, competitor, and I can see here that we've got one that's called opportunity line item. That could be of interest. Let's investigate this table in some more detail. Double-clicking the row header gets me details about this particular table. So here we can see that we've got something that has to do with name, quantity, total price, unit price. This looks like information that I can use. It also has information about the key, and it also tells us what other relationships this table might have to another table. So I can see here that it's tied to something called a price book, and it's also tied to something called a product. So those are 2 other tables that might be of interest to us as well. Each field has the field details over here on the right. So if I wanted to know what exactly is unit price, I could click over here and I could see that the field name is called unit price, but it's got a business name called sales price. It also tells us whether it's mandatory or not. It'll tell us what the data element information is, and we'll talk about that one in a little bit more detail later. It'll also give us details about the domain information. If we click on the Table Info tab, we'll get information about the table itself. So we've got some more details about this. This one tells me the number of parent tables that are associated with this. So if I click on the Relationships tab, I'm able to see that this is tied to Opportunity ID, Price Book ID, Product ID, and Created By and Last Modified By. Those 2 look like standard housekeeping type tables, but Product ID, Price Book, Opportunity, these look like things that might be of interest to us. Also, the indexes are here, so it'll tell me what indexes are associated with this as well. Let's close this out and let's take a look at maybe what the relationships are between opportunity line item in a slightly different way. If I right click on this, I can get table relationships showing up as its own window here. So if we look at this, we've got opportunity, price book, entry, product and user. So this tells me details about that. Any child tables that might be related to this would show up down here. So if I close this and I looked at opportunity and saw table relationships, now at the top I've got all the parents, but down at the bottom I've got all the child tables that might be related to this. Also, there's a checkbox in the upper right hand corner here, only with data. If I check this, it'll limit the list to only those tables that contain data. Now let's take a look at some of the other tabs we have. Along the top you'll see here we've got views, data elements, and domains. It just so happens that we don't have any views here, but we do have some data elements. So a data element is kind of like a column without any associated table. It's just a piece of information that is important to the application. And here we can sort on all kinds of information. Like let's suppose, for instance, we want to see, let's see, what kind of statuses might be here or what kind of types might be here. I could use wildcard characters like the asterisk to limit this data element search just by some reference to a status. And when we search on status, we can see here that we've got activity history status, all kinds of statuses in here. If I'm looking at case status, we've got a contract status. I wonder if there's any statuses associated with an opportunity. And we've got opportunity delivery statuses. So there's lots of information here. Let's look at the domains. An interesting thing about a domain is that if there are any, let's say, values associated with any of these things, the domain should tell us. So here we are in domains. Let's do the same thing. So here we have status, but now if I look at, let's say, activity history status, we can see over here on the right that there's a key: completed, deferred, in progress, not started, waiting on someone else. So this is valuable information for me to see if I might want to include some of these things in my data mart. So here's that opportunity delivery. It's either completed, in progress, or yet to begin. So this is interesting information. It gives us data type, details, length, etc. And these are things that we might also want to extract. Up till now, we've been looking at criteria one element at a time, or one criterion at a time. What if we wanted to search on multiple criteria at the same time? Here, if I click on the Tables tab, there's something called an advanced search. So I could go in here and I could search on a table name and a row count and a field and a data element name and a domain. So you can see here that I can actually get multi-criteria search using advanced and patterns. I could use question marks like question mark, question mark, question mark, underscore, asterisk. So I'd be looking for a pattern at that point. And then there's an extended filter which lets you do sort of a QBE grid here and filter on that criteria. Now what if I wanted to do a search across all of these elements here? Tables, views, data elements, domains, all at the same time. Right now I have to actually click on a single tab and do a search on each individual tab. If I go to the multi-object search, now when I search for the criteria, it's going to go across everything. So let's use that same status search. Now when we look at this, we can see that we have 7 tables. So each one of these has some kind of a status in its name, whether it be case status or email status or lead status. As I mentioned, there's no views here, so we don't have any views, but we've got 39 data elements in this search. And we've got 39 domains. So now we've got some information here that we can use for searching across multiple things. Let's go back to searching by opportunity. And again, I can just type in OPP and search, and I can see that I've got 10 tables that are associated with opportunity. Well, we have a pretty good idea of what we want. So when we were searching for this stuff here in opportunity, we found opportunity line item. We found out that that was associated with a kind of a price book. We saw that that was associated with a product. So there's a fair amount of stuff that I can start to pull together into a subject area. So now that I have this information here, let's suppose I want to start building a subject area based on this opportunity and opportunity line item. Up here on this toolbar, we have the same navigation buttons that we had in the tiles, and there's one here called Edit Subject Areas. So when I click on this, it is going to bring up the subject area space for us. And let's suppose we want to create a new one. There's a button down here at the bottom of this screen in the lower left-hand corner. I click on it, and let's just call this Sales Subjects. And right now there's nothing in here. Down at the bottom it says to add a table you can drag and drop it from the model overview or any of the other windows and bring them in here. But there's another way to do it. You can click once on one of the tables of interest, and then using the control key you can click on another one. So here I can select multiple tables, data elements, domains, etc. And I can bring them all in at the same time by right-clicking and then say add the selected elements to the subject area. So here I've got my opportunity and opportunity product. So I've basically got the beginnings of creating my subject area. Now, to save some time, I've gone ahead and created this sales subject area, which includes account information, contact information, obviously our opportunity stuff, as well as the price book and the product and the user. So these are all part of my sales subject area. The next step is to actually take this information and bring it into PowerDesigner. Now we'll use the toolbar to start this as well. Here we'll click on the Start Export Wizard. So it is a wizard. It's going to walk us through a series of steps to actually move this information from Safyr into PowerDesigner. So here it's asking me which subject area do you want to select. So I'll select this one. For this demo, we're going to send the information out to PowerDesigner. So we'll leave that radio button selected. Here down towards the bottom it says File Name. This is essentially telling us where do we want to send it. So there's an ellipsis button. And then last thing is to just click the next button here. And then under the building options, it's basically saying that you've selected a number of tables. And then those tables may have relationships with other tables. And it's asking how many levels deep do you want to go? Maybe the account table has an association with several child tables. We could say we want to go down 2, maybe 3 levels. Here we'll just keep it simple. We'll stay at 1. Following the child relationships, you can choose all or just identifying child relationships. Here we'll just leave it at all. And if you have 0 entered in here for the export settings, it will have no limit on the number of tables it's going to return. For the purposes of this demo, we'll just set it to 20. Here we could say include tables containing data only. We'll leave that one unchecked, and we'll start the export process. Now, once I start the export process, Safyr gives me a log as to what it's doing, how many objects it's working on, and it shouldn't take too much time to actually go through and finish up this export. So here it tells us that the export is finished and it sent the information to PowerDesigner. So all we have to do right now is to go into PowerDesigner, and that model should be there. Okay, here we are in PowerDesigner. And if we look at our workspace over here on the left, you'll see that there's a model called Safyr, and it's called Salesforce Sales Subjects 5. When we look at this model, you can see that there are 2 diagrams that have been created. One is called Default Subject Area, and the other one is subject area, which is the sales subjects. This diagram is essentially what we selected as our focused set of tables. The default subject area diagram is everything that Safyr brought over. So if we look below this, we can see that we got domains, tables, references. So if we look at the tables over here, we can see that we got account, and we've got contact and opportunity. We also got a few that we didn't select, such as campaign and call center. And the reason we got those is because a campaign and a call center are somehow related to an opportunity and an opportunity line item and things like that. Let's take a look at the domains. If we look at the domains here, we've got a list of all of our domains. Like for instance, here's one called campaign status. And this is where we got the domain values, where we had the key and the description text. So planned, in progress, completed, aborted. Those domain values came over here. We could take that information and we could bring it into the standard checks where we can have the value and we can have the label. So we can do some additional augmentation to the model after we've brought it in. Let's go to tables again, and here let's go back to that opportunity table here. So we've got an opportunity product, and we can see here we just definitely have a difference between the name and the code being, of course, the physical name, and name being the logical or business name. Any kind of comments that were there, we've got those as well, and all the columns that are associated with this. So we got our total price and our sales price and our list price and some of these other things that we were interested in. And lastly, let's take a look at the references that we got. All the references came in. So let's see, there's an account to opportunity. Let's take a look at that one. And we can see here that we've got a name and a code. We've got some comments, some other details about the relationship is here as well. And since the database it was associated with was Oracle, all the details about Oracle stuff are here. Join criteria is here, integrity information is here, preview of DDL is here. So we got a fair amount of stuff. Let's take a look at the diagram in the center here. Here we're looking at the default subject area. When Safyr brings the stuff in, it just sort of drops it in here. If I zoom in, I can see details about the symbol and the information that's contained in each one of these tables. Let's neaten it up a little bit. It looks a little crazy, so let's use our auto layout. And let's say we're going to look at it hierarchically, and let's look at it from right to left. And now it looks a little bit easier to deal with. So we can see here that we have some tables that have a significant amount of relationships that are associated with it. So if I zoom into it, so we've got the user table here. Additional details about the other tables are also here. So graphically, we get a pretty good picture of what's here. The subject area diagram is only limited to those things that were of interest to us. If I zoom in, let's say to this stuff here, as we look through this, we can see that there's a lot of information in here, like last modified date, system mod stamp. A lot of this stuff here is details for maintenance of the database. I don't necessarily need to see all of this stuff. So what I can do after this comes into PowerDesigner is go ahead and modify it a little bit, augment it, clean this up so that I can actually work with it a little bit better. So to save you some time, I've gone ahead on the far left-hand side, I've got my source system. So in this case, I've got my Safyr overall view and sales subject area view. So if I look at this one here, I can see that I've got a much smaller and easier to read set of information. Same thing here with the sales subject areas. If I zoom into this, I can see here that product and price book and opportunity and account are limited to really just the information I need to see. For instance, opportunity product, I'm interested in the quantities and total price and sales price. I can hide the metadata that I don't need. I haven't lost it. It's still there. It's just that I don't need to display it. I've just limited the display. So I can go in here and add more metadata if I want to. So let's say, for instance, I talked to a subject matter expert and they gave me some basic short descriptions. So if I look at these tables now, I've got my name and code, which is of course the business name and the technical name, but I've also got some comments in here about essentially what the short definition is for, let's say, opportunity product. If I go in here, I can see that opportunity product, which has a code of opportunity line item here. So this gives me a little bit more detail about what's actually in there. I could do the same thing with columns. I could add some more details to it. For instance, over here, we can see that total price represents total price for an opportunity line item, etc. In addition to that, let's say on the relationship side, if I double click a relationship, I could change the name to something more business specific. Like I could say that an opportunity details the opportunity item. So here in my comment, it associates a sale with details about items being sold, which is a little bit easier to understand than the cryptic stuff that was in there before. Now, I haven't lost it. All I really did here was take it and add it to my annotation. So I don't really like to throw away any metadata that I might get out of Safyr. I just might move it to a different location. So let's cancel that and let's take a look at the overall view. Now, I thought I got all of the information I needed, but I may have missed something. So by actually putting in these short descriptions and then limiting this to just showing me the table definition, I can begin to look at each one of these tables and see if any one of these things actually needs to be included, like maybe an account partner. So this information is valuable at a high level to see essentially what Salesforce tables are really telling me. Now, once I've looked at all of these things, now I need to integrate this with the other sales application that might be running in this organization. So if I look at this one here, this is just a simple schema that tells us about products and sales orders and customers and sales order items. So this is the other system. So right now I've got my Safyr information and my internal sales application information. And what I need to do is I need to integrate that with my sales analysis data mart that we looked at earlier. So this is my sales analysis data mart. Let's see how the information maps. Under the Tools menu in PowerDesigner, there's something called a mapping editor. And when I look at the mapping editor here, I can see I've got my sales application, which has its tables, and I've got Salesforce, which has its tables. So here, when I start to look at my data mart, I can now look at, let's say, sales facts, and I can look at that thing called unit price, and I can see that it's mapped in Salesforce as something called sales price. So I can start to map the appropriate information from Salesforce into this particular data mart by using the mapping editor. The other thing I want to do is I want to understand, did my requirements list, were they met through this model? So if I look over here on the left, I've got my sales analysis requirements. We looked at this at the beginning, but if I go into this, I can now see traceability links. I can associate this requirement to a particular sales object that might be in one or the other source or target area. And because I have this information, I can look at its dependencies and run the impact and lineage analysis on this to show that requirement 2, profitability, is associated with a sales fact called unit price and product price. And if I look at unit price and I expand that out, it has mappings to the sources. So it will tell me that this came from something called opportunity product, and it's something called sales price. So I have got my lineage analysis back to the original source and the target from my mapping here. So to wrap things up here, let's go to my project diagram and I'll give you an overview. In this PowerDesigner project, we've got our internal sales application, and we've got our Safyr Salesforce subjects, and we associated that with this model here called our sales analysis data mart, and we have a set of requirements which are associated with that. And you can see here that we've got mapping from our internal sales application, and we have mapping from the Safyr Salesforce back to this data mart, and it references our requirements. So here in this small project, we're able to accomplish our goals, which were to integrate the internal sales with the Salesforce. We were able to show the impact and lineage analysis from source to target, and we were also able to discover what metadata was in the Salesforce application by using the Safyr product to help us get there. So that's it. And that concludes today's PowerDesigner demonstration. I hope you found it useful. For more information about Sandhill Consultants and how we can help you with your modeling practice, see us at www.sandhillconsultants.com. Thanks for watching.